Good day, everyone. I am Christine, the moderator for this webinar. I welcome everyone to today's webinar, How to Prepare and Survive an OSHA Audit. I would like to introduce our presenter for today, Joe Keenan. Joe Keenan is a highly experienced environmental health and safety and human resources professional and management consultant with over 25 years of experience. I would now like to hand over the floor to the speaker. Over to you, Joe.
All right. Well, good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're logging in. Happy Friday. Thank you so much for participating. Got a very timely and important topic to cover. We're going to be talking about how to effectively navigate through OSHA regulatory compliance audits. We're talking about OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, but these tips are good for any regulatory agency audit that you may have. Always be prepared and have a plan. And this training helps and it plays a key role in that. You want to make sure you're very familiar with all of the regulatory agency compliance laws, statutes, etc. The other thing that is critical is to document everything. You want to make sure that you're staying up to date. Again, we're very much in a high change environment with regulations. We're mainly focusing on OSHA today, but as we talked about, these tips can apply to any regulatory agency, right? So OSHA, the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, State Department of Natural Resources or State Department of Environmental Quality, the Fire Marshal. If you discharge to what's called a POTW, Publicly Owned Treatment Works, which is a sewer treatment plant, with OSHA, they can inspect at any time. But audits are typically conducted during normal business hours. Now, OSHA audits can be triggered by the following activities. All right, so with OSHA audits, you want to make sure you have a written plan in place on how to handle regulatory agency compliance audits. Having a designated and trained person is critical to handle a regulatory compliance audit. Okay, so let's talk about protocols. The first thing you want to do is verify the auditor's credentials. Second thing you want to do, and this is a critical step, ask about the scope of the audit. I highly recommend you escort the auditor to a conference room and have that pre-planned. You want to confine the scope of the audit if at all possible. Anything the compliance officer sees or witnesses during the audit can and will be used in issuing citations or notices of violation. You always want to treat the officer or compliance officer or auditor with courtesy. Remember, anything you or another employee tells a compliance officer is never off the record. During the OSHA audit, you want to make sure the auditor is escorted at all times. But you want to take copious notes and write down anything the compliance officer states or asks about during the inspection. You never want to leave the compliance officer alone. This is a critical point. When the compliance officer asks for a specific written program or a training record, only show or acknowledge that specific written program or training record. What you don't want to do is hand them, that OSHA compliance officer, a whole binder of programs. Most regulatory compliance auditors are professional in nature. But people are human beings, right? Politely ask the compliance officer to refrain from using that kind of language. With OSHA, in certain cases, you can require a warrant to be issued before an inspection takes place. If they find anything, and they most likely will, you want to immediately note it, right, and fix it. If something can't be addressed immediately, like on the spot or within a few minutes or a relatively short time frame, what I highly recommend is shutting that job down. Once the audit is over, you want to request a closing conference. And in the closing conference, the auditor will go over what he or she found. And then you want to take copious notes. Once the regulatory compliance audit is over, you want to conduct a full debrief with all the parties. The other thing that's important is the compliance officer is not allowed to ask for any money in any way, shape, or form. If they do that, that's a violation of the law or they're a scammer. Proactive steps: prevent an audit and develop a safety culture. So safety culture definition: the beliefs, customs, arts, etc. of a particular society, group, place, or time. It's a way of thinking, behaving, or working that exists in a place or organization. Why is it important to have a safety culture? One way to do that is to gauge where you're at. Some questions to ask: where does your organization fit in this model? and what are some ways we can do to improve. A great way to do that is, as I mentioned before, the Voluntary Protection Program. The Voluntary Protection Program is the highest award in health and safety excellence that OSHA presents to a plant. There's 5 key elements. 2 are now grouped together, so there's 4 key elements. Management commitment and employee involvement are complementary. Worksite analysis is actively analyzing the worksite for hazards. Hazard prevention and control. And last, but certainly not least, is safety and health training. Conduct a comprehensive OSHA regulatory gap assessment based on the tools above, and make sure to include your safety committee and your leadership teams as part of the process. Thank you once again for participating. Really appreciate it, and hope you have a great weekend. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next presentation.
Thank you, Joe. That concludes the session for today. Thank you everyone for participating. You may all disconnect now and have a great weekend.